Claire didn't hesitate. The next day, she submitted the evidence, screenshots of Emily's messages with Matt, calendar entries that didn't align with her work schedule, and financial records showing how she'd spent our joint savings on their little getaways. Hey, Humne ben kokong? Rat vui vi ban de no chung twavakwe tro li Reddit cheating stories. Hey zem ham, ne chung ta ko ka chuyen gi now. Friday night was supposed to be simple. Emily and I were heading to the Ivy, our regular spot with friends. Honestly, I wasn't in the mood to socialize. Work had been draining, and all I wanted was to stay home, crack open a beer, and binge something mindless. But Emily had other plans. "We need to get out more, Jack," she'd insisted, slipping in her sleek black dress and swiping on her signature red lipstick. Her tone left no room for debate. By the time we arrived, the Ivy was buzzing with life. Our usual group was already there. Chloe, Emily's overly dramatic best friend, Jason, the loud joker, and a few others who drifted in and out of our circle. Emily, as always, stole the spotlight. She moved through conversations effortlessly, laughing and leaning in just a bit too close to people. She was magnetic, and she knew it. I tried to join in, but it was like I wasn't even there. Every joke I made landed flat. Every time I started a conversation, Emily would cut in with something sharper, something that pulled the attention back to her. It wasn't unusual for her to command a room, but tonight it felt different. Her laughter was louder, her touches lingered longer, and her eyes never landed on me. Not once. Halfway through the night, I noticed her phone on the table. It sat face down, buzzing intermittently. Each time it vibrated, Emily would glance at it and smile, a smile I hadn't seen her direct at me in months. She didn't pick it up, just let it buzz like it was some private joke she was savoring. "Who keeps texting you?" I asked, trying to sound casual. "Work stuff," she said, not even looking up. "At this hour?" She finally glanced at me, her expression cold and dismissive. "It's a campaign, Jack. Deadlines don't clock out. Can we not?" I let it drop, but a knot tightened in my stomach. Then came the toast. Emily stood abruptly, clinking her glass with a spoon. The table quieted, everyone turning to her with expectant smiles. I braced myself for one of her sharp-witted roasts or a light-hearted story. Instead, she raised her glass and said, "To Jack, the man who, well, honestly puts up with more than anyone should. Cheers to patience." The room fell into an awkward silence. Jason broke it with a forced laugh, and the others followed, their chuckles uneasy. But I wasn't laughing. Her words weren't playful. They were pointed, dripping with an inside joke I wasn't in on. My face burned, but I forced a thin smile and raised my glass. Inside, I felt like I'd been slapped. When she finally sat down, I leaned in close. "What the hell was that about?" She didn't even flinch. "Relax, Jack. It's a joke. You need to lighten up. Humiliating me in front of our friends is a joke." Before she could answer, her phone buzzed again. This time, she grabbed it, her thumb moving quickly as she typed a reply. "I need some air," I muttered, standing abruptly. Outside, the cool night air hit me, but it did little to clear my head. My thoughts raced. Was I overreacting? Paranoid? Maybe I was blowing things out of proportion. But that toast, that wasn't normal. My phone vibrated in my pocket, pulling me from my spiraling thoughts. It was a message from Emily. "Are you okay? You know I love you, right?" I stared at the screen, my pulse quickening. The words felt hollow, like she was trying to pacify me rather than actually care. For the first time, I didn't reply. Something was happening. Something she wasn't telling me. And I was going to find out what it was. I walked back into the bar, but the atmosphere had shifted. The air felt heavier, like a room full of people hiding a secret. Emily was back at the table, her phone now conspicuously absent. She was deep in conversation with Chloe, who kept glancing at me with a strange mix of amusement and pity. Whatever they were talking about, I wasn't meant to hear it. Jason waved me over. "Jack, man, grab another drink. You look like you've seen a ghost." I forced a chuckle and waved him off, heading straight to the bar instead. I ordered a whiskey, something strong to steady my nerves, and kept my eyes on Emily. Her laugh rang out, sharp and pointed. It wasn't for me. I wasn't sure what I was looking for. Maybe a crack in her facade, a slip that explained why everything suddenly felt so off. And then I saw it. Chloe slid Emily's phone across the table. Emily picked it up, her face lighting up in a way I hadn't seen in years. Her thumb moved quickly across the screen, her smile widening. The knot in my stomach tightened. Something was wrong, and I wasn't leaving tonight without answers. Emily glanced at her phone for only a second before flipping it face down again, biting her lip to stifle a smile. That was it. I couldn't take it anymore. I walked over, my heart pounding, and leaned in close. We're leaving. Now. Emily looked up, her face blank. We just got here. Don't be such a buzzkill. Chloe, sipping her drink with a smirk, chimed in. Oh, come on, Jack. Let her have some fun. She's been working so hard lately. The remark pushed me over the edge. Emily, let's go. Or I will. She rolled her eyes, tossing her napkin onto the table. Fine. If it's that important to you. We left without saying goodbye to anyone. The sharp clicks of her heels on the pavement matching the tension between us. The silence as we walked to the car was suffocating. When we got in, Emily crossed her arms, staring out the window like a petulant teenager. What the hell is going on, Emily? I finally asked, my voice tight. She turned to me, her eyes narrowing. What are you talking about? Don't play dumb, I snapped. The toast, the texts, the way you've been acting for weeks. What's going on? Her lips curled into a cruel smile. God, Jack, you're so paranoid. Not everything is about you, you know? My grip tightened on the steering wheel, knuckles white. Then what is it about? Because it sure as hell feels like you're hiding something. She didn't answer. Instead, she turned her head back to the window, dismissing me entirely. I clenched my jaw and started the car. When we got home, Emily went straight to the bathroom, locking the door behind her. I stood in the living room, staring at her purse, which she'd tossed carelessly onto the couch. My hands shook, my mind racing. Something was wrong. I don't know what came over me, but I reached for it. Her phone wasn't there. Of course not. She'd taken it with her. But her work tablet was, and it was unlocked. I hesitated, my conscience screaming at me to stop. But that little voice, the one whispering, you already know something's wrong, Jack. Just confirm it, was louder. I opened her messages. Nothing unusual. Email? All work-related. I was about to close it when I noticed an unfamiliar app. Something innocuous looking, a name I didn't recognize. I tapped it, and my blood ran cold. The first message stared back at me, damning in its clarity. Last night was amazing. Can't stop thinking about you. Emily, me too. Same time next week? I scrolled up, my hands trembling. The messages were blatant, unapologetic. Each line was a dagger, confirming the truth I had been too afraid to confront. And then I heard the bathroom door unlock. Emily walked into the living room, drying her hands on a towel. She froze when she saw me holding her tablet, her eyes darting to the screen. What the hell are you doing? She snapped, her voice sharp. I stood, my chest heaving. What is this, Emily? I held out the tablet, the messages glaring back at her. Her expression flickered, just for a moment, before settling into something cold and detached. She crossed her arms, her lips curling into that same cruel smile. Are you seriously going through my stuff now? God, Jack, you're pathetic. Don't you dare turn this on me, I growled. You've been lying to me. For how long, Emily? Weeks? Months? Her silence stretched unbearably long. Then, she shrugged, her tone icy. Does it matter? That was it. My world shattered in an instant. Her words hung in the air like a bomb waiting to explode. Does it matter? I repeated, barely able to process what she had just said. My chest felt tight, and I gripped the tablet like it was the only thing keeping me upright. What the hell does that mean, Emily? Of course it matters. She rolled her eyes, like this was some minor inconvenience. Jack, you're overreacting. It's not a big deal. Not a big deal? I spat, my voice rising. You're sneaking around, messaging some guy about whatever this is, and you think it's not a big deal? Her smile returned, sharp and condescending. Okay, fine. You want the truth? Yes, I've been seeing someone. And honestly, I don't even know why you're so shocked. You've been checked out for months. I stumbled back as if her words had physically struck me. Checked out? Are you serious? I've been working my ass off to keep this house, this life, us, together. And meanwhile, you're off doing this? I shook the tablet for emphasis, my hands trembling. Emily shrugged again, her indifference cutting deeper than her words. Well, maybe if you'd paid a little more attention to me, I wouldn't have had to look elsewhere. And that was it. Something inside me broke. The sound of the tablet slamming onto the coffee table echoed through the room. My voice was cold, sharp as steel. Don't you dare try to pin this on me, Emily. You made this choice. You lied. You betrayed me. That's on you. She didn't even flinch. Her expression was stone cold, her tone dripping with disdain. Oh, spare me the self-righteous act, Jack. You're not exactly a saint. You've been so wrapped up in your precious job that you didn't even notice how unhappy I was. You don't talk to me. You don't make me feel wanted. What did you expect? Her words hit me like a blow. Unhappy, I said, my voice shaking. You could have talked to me, Emily. Told me how you felt. You didn't have to destroy our marriage because you were feeling neglected. She laughed, a bitter, humorless sound that made my stomach churn. Talk to you? Please. You don't listen, Jack. You know, I'd say, and go right back to your emails or whatever else is so damn important to you. Face it, we've been done for a while. You're just too blind to see it. Her words felt like knives, each one cutting deeper than the last. My legs gave out, and I sank into the armchair, staring at her in disbelief. So that's it? I whispered. You just decided it was over, and instead of telling me, you sneak around behind my back? Was it worth it, Emily? Was he worth it? For the first time, her confidence wavered. She looked away, her jaw tightening. I don't owe you an explanation, she said, her voice quieter now, but no less cutting. Like hell you don't, I shot back, standing again, my voice rising. Who is he? Tell me. She hesitated, then sighed long and slow, as if this entire conversation was a tedious inconvenience. Fine, she said, her tone flat. If you must know, it's Matt. From work. Matt. I knew him, a marketing guy Emily occasionally mentioned. She'd always described him as harmless, kind of a dork. My fists clenched at the thought of him, smug and clueless, texting my wife while I was working overtime to keep us afloat. That's who you're risking everything for? Matt. My voice was thick with disbelief. Emily smirked, a cruel twist of her lips. He listens to me, Jack. He makes me feel appreciated. Something you clearly forgot how to do. Her words were venom, and I was choking on it. Appreciated? I spat. You think he appreciates you? He's using you, Emily. Just like you're using him. And when this all blows up in your face, don't you dare come crawling back to me. For the first time, anger flashed in her eyes. You think you're so much better, don't you? She snapped. Like you're some perfect husband? Newsflash, Jack. You're not. You're boring, predictable, and exhausting. I needed something more. The floor felt like it was crumbling beneath me. This wasn't just betrayal. It was the complete annihilation of everything I thought we had. I took a deep breath, trying to steady myself. You're unbelievable, I said, my voice trembling with rage and heartbreak. You've destroyed us, Emily. And for what? For someone who's probably already planning his next fling? She shrugged, her indifference returning like a shield. Maybe he is. Maybe he isn't. At least with him, I feel alive. That word alive echoed in my mind, mocking me. Get out, I said, my voice low and cold. Her eyebrows shot up. Excuse me? I said, get out, Emily. Go stay with your precious Matt. Go feel alive with him. Just get out of my house. For a moment, she looked like she might argue. But then she grabbed her purse and keys, her movements deliberate and slow. Fine, she said, her voice dripping with contempt. I'll go. But don't think for a second this is all on me, Jack. You pushed me to this. I didn't respond. I couldn't. I just watched as she walked out the door, slamming it behind her. The silence that followed was deafening. I sat back down, staring at the tablet on the table, the messages still glowing on the screen like a wound that refused to heal. For the first time in years, I felt completely and utterly alone. The house was eerily quiet the next morning. Emily's perfume still lingered faintly in the air, a mocking reminder of her presence. She had walked these floors, shared this life, and now she was gone. Off to wherever Matt was, I assumed. I hadn't slept. My mind raced all night, replaying every word, every moment from the argument. Her indifference, her cruel smile, the way she walked out as if this were just another petty fight and not the total obliteration of our marriage. I stared at the empty space where her car used to be, the weight of her absence pressing down like a suffocating blanket. I had lost her. No, she had thrown me away. It felt like she'd been planning her escape for months, and I was just now catching on. By 7 a.m., I couldn't lie in bed any longer. Pulling on an old hoodie, I shuffled into the kitchen, the weak sputter of the coffee pot the only sound in the quiet house. I stared blankly as the machine brewed, my thoughts looping endlessly. Was I truly that blind? Had I missed all the signs? Or had Emily just become that skilled at hiding her lies? My phone buzzed, snapping me out of my trance. I grabbed it instinctively, half hoping for, what? An apology? A shred of guilt? Instead, it was Jason. Jason, dude, are you okay? Last night was intense. I didn't respond. What could I say? Scrolling through my contacts, my thumb hovered over Chloe's name. Something about her smug smile at the bar wouldn't leave my mind. She knew. She had to know. Before I could overthink it, I hit call. Jack. Chloe answered, her voice groggy. It's early. What's up? You tell me, I said, my tone flat. You seemed pretty cozy with Emily last night. Care to fill me in on what the hell is going on? A pause, then a sigh. Jack, I don't want to get involved in this. It's between you and Emily. Don't pull that crap, Chloe. You've been her best friend for years. You knew about Matt, didn't you? The silence on her end stretched longer this time. Finally, she exhaled. Look, Emily told me some things in confidence. I didn't think it was my place to say anything. So, you just sat there, smiling like the cat who swallowed the canary. While she made a fool out of me, my voice rose despite my effort to stay calm. Chloe groaned. Jack, don't do this. You got your side of the story, but Emily, she's been unhappy for a long time. You had to see this coming. The words hit like a gut punch. See it coming? What the hell are you talking about? She felt ignored, Jack. Like she didn't matter. You were so wrapped up in your own world that you didn't notice hers falling apart. That's no excuse, I snapped. If she was unhappy, she could have talked to me instead of running off to some sleazeball from work. Maybe she should have, Chloe shot back, her tone sharper now. But let's not pretend you're blameless here. Relationships take two, Jack. I couldn't take it anymore. You know what? Forget it. Enjoy covering for her. You're just as bad as she is. I hung up before she could respond, my heart pounding. The room felt smaller, suffocating. Her words echoed in my mind, mingling with Emily's from the night before. Was I really the problem? Had I missed something so obvious? No, this wasn't on me. I hadn't betrayed her. I hadn't lied, snuck around, or humiliated her in front of our friends. I wasn't perfect, sure, but I didn't deserve this. Anger bubbled up again as I grabbed my phone, scrolling to Emily's contact. My finger hovered over the call button, the urge to confront her building. Instead, I sent a text. You're gonna come by and get your stuff. Tell me when. I don't want to see you, so make sure I'm not here. Her response came almost instantly. Emily, I'll figure it out. Don't worry. I don't want to see you either. That one hurt more than I expected. Even now, she couldn't summon an ounce of regret or kindness. I stared at the screen for a long time, the coffee in my mug growing cold. For the first time since this nightmare began, I felt something heavier than anger or betrayal. Grief. Grief for the life we'd built, for the person I thought she was, for the version of me that had believed in us, even as the cracks started to show. As the morning light streamed through the window, it hit me. This wasn't just the end of my marriage. It was the end of who I'd been for the last 6 years. By midday, the house was suffocatingly quiet. My mind refused to stop racing. I tried cleaning, scrubbing dishes that didn't need it, folding laundry I didn't care about. But it didn't help. Every corner of the house held a memory of Emily, and each one felt like a dagger twisting deeper. The tablet still sat on the coffee table like a ghost. Its screen dark, but the messages burned into my brain. Last night was amazing. Same time next week? The thought that she'd planned to keep this going, treating our life as nothing more than an inconvenient backdrop, made my stomach turn. I grabbed the tablet again. I knew it wouldn't change anything, but I needed answers. I needed to know how deep her lies went. Her calendar was the first thing to catch my eye. Dates marked with harmless little notes. Meeting, late dinner, office event. But they didn't align with the rest of her schedule. These weren't work events. They were excuses. Cover-ups. My stomach churned as I realized how much effort she'd put into deceiving me. Then I opened her emails. Most of the emails were mundane, the usual work-related threads, but a few stood out like neon signs. Matt, looking forward to tonight. Should we take separate cars again? Emily. Yeah, can't have Jack getting suspicious. LOL. I nearly hurled the tablet across the room. This wasn't just betrayal. It was mockery. She didn't just lie. She laughed about it. She knew exactly what she was doing, and she didn't care. But the worst part? It wasn't just the affair. It was how little I seemed to matter to her. How easily she could trivialize the life we'd built together. As I sat there, staring at the screen in disbelief, my phone buzzed. Another message from Jason. Jason, dude, you sure you're okay? We're here if you need anything. Jason, the ever-loyal friend. Clueless about the depth of the disaster I was navigating. I couldn't bring myself to explain it all. Instead, I replied, Me? Not great, man, but thanks. I'll be fine. But I wasn't fine. Not even close. The rest of the day blurred by. I tried to eat, but couldn't stomach it. Every bite tasted like ash. My thoughts circled endlessly back to Emily. Her cold indifference, the lies, the cruel smirk she wore as she walked out the night before. How could someone who once claimed to love me become such a stranger? Late in the afternoon, I heard the sound of her car pulling into the driveway. Panic gripped me. She wasn't supposed to come back today. The front door opened, and there she was, standing in the hallway like nothing had happened. I'm here for my stuff, she said flatly. I crossed my arms, staying rooted where I stood. You couldn't have called first? Her eyes flicked to mine, irritation flashing across her face. I didn't think I needed your permission, Jack. You didn't, I replied coldly, but a heads up would have been nice. You made it pretty clear you didn't want to see me, remember? Emily shrugged and brushed past me, heading toward the bedroom. I'll be quick. I followed her, keeping my distance but unable to stop watching her every move. She grabbed clothes from the closet, her hands methodical, her expression unreadable. I couldn't hold back. So, that's it? No explanation, no apology? Just packing up like this is some casual breakup? She paused, a dress in her hands, and looked at me with an almost bored expression. What do you want me to say, Jack? That I'm sorry? That I regret it? Because I don't. I did what I had to do. What you had to do? I nearly laughed, though there was no humor in it. You mean lying to me, humiliating me, and throwing our life away for what? A fling? Her eyes narrowed. You don't get it, do you? This wasn't about Matt. It was about me finally realizing I deserved to be happy. And you? You were never going to make me happy. Her words hit like a sledgehammer, knocking the air out of me. You think this makes you happy? Sneaking around, lying, destroying everything we built together? She turned away, throwing the dress in her suitcase with a casual toss. I didn't come here to fight. Just let me pack and leave. I stood there, trembling with anger and disbelief. You're a coward, Emily. You didn't do what you had to do. You took the easy way out. Instead of fixing things, you ran. And the worst part? You don't even care. For the first time, something cracked in her expression. Guilt, maybe, but she buried it just as quickly as it surfaced. Believe what you want, Jack, she said, her tone cold and dismissive. I'm done explaining myself to you. With that, she zipped her suitcase, grabbed it, and walked out the door without another word. I didn't follow. I didn't yell. I didn't cry. I just stood there, frozen, listening to the sound of her car pulling out of the driveway and disappearing into the distance. It was over. Really over. But in that moment, I realized something. I didn't just lose her. I lost the illusion of who she was. And maybe that's what hurt the most. The silence after Emily's departure wasn't peaceful. It was suffocating. The house felt like it had swallowed me whole. Everywhere I turned, there were reminders of her. Her favorite mug still sat on the counter. The throw blanket she always curled up with was draped over the couch. The faint scent of her perfume clung to the bedroom curtains like a ghost. I sat in the living room, staring at the empty space where her suitcase had been. My thoughts spiraled, anger mixed with grief, swirling into something darker. How had I missed this? How had I been so blind to the cracks she claimed were always there? Her words played on a loop in my head. You were never going to make me happy. I deserve to be happy. You pushed me to this. It was maddening. The way she framed herself as the victim, as though her betrayal was somehow justified because I wasn't enough. I needed an outlet, something to release the storm raging inside me. Anything to stop the thoughts from devouring me. Without thinking, I grabbed my keys and stepped into the cold evening air. It hit like a slap, but I barely noticed. I drove aimlessly, the roads blurring into one another, city lights streaking across the windshield like smears of broken promises. Eventually, I found myself parked outside a bar, a dingy, unfamiliar place far from the ivy. Inside, the air was thick with smoke and the stench of stale beer. It wasn't welcoming, but that wasn't what I needed. I ordered a whiskey and found a corner booth, keeping my head down. The burn of the drink was grounding, but my mind still raced. Against my better judgment, I pulled out my phone and opened Emily's social media. Nothing. No cryptic quotes or carefully curated snapshots of her new life. But I knew her. She was likely already weaving a narrative, one that absolved her and painted me as the villain. And then a thought struck me. Matt. Without hesitation, I searched for his profile. There he was, smug, grinning, the type of guy who probably spent more time perfecting his hair than doing actual work. As I scrolled through his posts, a knot formed in my stomach. A recent post from last week caught my eye, tagged at a restaurant I didn't recognize. Great night with even better company. Wine glass. Beneath the caption, Emily's name was tagged, alongside a heart emoji. The glass in my hand tightened under my grip, threatening to shatter. This wasn't a mistake or a lapse in judgment. This was deliberate, planned, and out in the open. They weren't even trying to hide it anymore. Rough night. The voice startled me, pulling me from my spiraling thoughts. I looked up to see the bartender, a middle-aged man with a weathered face, standing by my table. He nodded at my nearly empty glass. You look like you could use another. I nodded, and he returned with a fresh pour. You want to talk about it? He asked, leaning slightly against the booth. Normally, I wouldn't have, but tonight I couldn't hold it in. My wife cheated on me, I said bluntly, the words tasting bitter as they left my mouth. With some guy from her office. He whistled low, shaking his head. That's tough, man. Did you confront her? Oh, I did, I said, my voice dripping with bitterness. She didn't even deny it. Acted like it was my fault, like I drove her to it. The bartender frowned, his expression hardening. People like that don't know how to take responsibility. It's easier to blame someone else. I nodded, his words resonating even though they didn't dull the ache. I don't know what to do now, I admitted. She's gone, but it doesn't feel like it's over. He tapped the edge of the table thoughtfully. It won't feel over until you decide it is. People like her? They'll drag you down if you let them. Don't give her that power. His words lingered as I finished my drink. For the first time that night, I felt a flicker of clarity. Emily had taken so much from me. My trust, my peace, my sense of stability. But she wasn't going to take my future. I left the bar with a newfound resolve. There were battles ahead, divorce papers dividing up our lives and facing the inevitable questions from friends and family. But one thing was clear, Emily had made her choice. Now it was my turn to make mine. I was done being a casualty in her story. The next morning, I woke up with a clarity that comes only after hitting rock bottom. Emily's words still stung, but something had shifted. She wasn't here to manipulate the narrative anymore, to twist my guilt and insecurities into tools for her convenience. This was my story now, and I had decisions to make. The first call I made was to a lawyer. I need to start the divorce process, I said, the words bitter but necessary. The lawyer, a no-nonsense woman named Claire, listened calmly as I laid out the details. Emily's affair, her cold dismissal of our marriage, her complete lack of remorse. Claire didn't flinch, Gather any documents you have, she said. Bank statements, joint accounts, property deeds, anything that ties the two of you together financially. And if you have evidence of her infidelity, that could help with negotiations. I thought of the text from Matt, the messages on her tablet. They were damning. Part of me hesitated, wondering if it was too cruel to use them. But then I remembered her laughing at my expense, dismissing me like I was nothing more than a footnote in her pursuit of happiness. No, I wasn't playing fair anymore. With Claire's guidance, I spent the next few hours combing through every shared document, every email, every file that connected Emily and me. It felt clinical, like dissecting the corpse of our relationship, but it also felt empowering. For the first time in weeks, I was taking control. The second strike came fast. I texted Jason. Me? Need to talk. Can we meet? Jason? Of course. My place in an hour. An hour later, I was sitting on Jason's couch, spilling everything. For once, Jason wasn't cracking jokes or throwing out his usual lighthearted banter. Instead, he listened quietly, his expression grim. "Man," he said when I finished. "I had no idea it was that bad. Emily? She really did that to you?" "Yeah," I said, staring at the floor. "And she didn't even care. She left like it was just another day." Jason leaned back, running a hand through his hair. "That's cold, Jack. Really cold. But you know what? You're handling it better than I would have. I'd have lost it." I managed a weak smile. "Oh, don't worry. I've had my moments." Jason hesitated before adding, "You know, Chloe's been acting weird too, right? I don't know if she's in on this whole thing with Emily, but something's off." My stomach turned. Chloe, Emily's best friend, her confidant, the one who'd smirked at me that night at the bar. She knew more than she let on. "You think she knew?" I asked. Jason nodded slowly. "If she didn't, I'd be shocked. Chloe and Emily are thick as thieves. If Emily was sneaking around, Chloe was probably covering for her. That settled it. Chloe was next on my list. The confrontation. Later that afternoon, I called Chloe. She answered on the second ring, her voice overly bright, like she'd been expecting me. "Well, if it isn't Jack," she said. "How's life in the drama zone?" "Cut the crap, Chloe," I said, my voice sharp. "We need to talk. In person." She hesitated, her playful tone faltering. "Sure. What's this about?" "You know exactly what it's about." There was silence on the other end, then a sigh. "Fine. Meet me at the coffee shop on 5th. When I arrived, Chloe was already there, sipping an iced latte and scrolling through her phone like she didn't have a care in the world. She glanced up as I approached, her expression guarded. "So," she said, setting her drink down. "What's on your mind?" "You knew," I said, sitting across from her. "You knew about Emily and Matt, didn't you?" Chloe didn't flinch. She leaned back in her chair, crossing her arms. "What if I did? What difference does it make now?" My fists clenched under the table. "It makes a difference because you helped her. You lied for her. You let her humiliate me. And you didn't say a damn thing." Chloe sighed, rolling her eyes. "Jack, you're blowing this out of proportion. Emily was miserable. She needed an escape. I didn't agree with how she handled it. But it wasn't my place to intervene. Not your place," I said, my voice rising. "You sat there, laughing with her while she lied to my face. How is that not your place?" Chloe leaned forward, her tone turning icy. "Look, Jack, I get it. You're hurt. But maybe you should be asking yourself why Emily felt like she couldn't be honest with you in the first place. Relationships don't just fall apart for no reason." That was the last straw. I stood up, glaring down at her. "You can defend her all you want, Chloe. But when this is all over, and she moves on to her next escape, don't come crawling back with excuses. You chose your side." Without waiting for a response, I turned and walked out of the coffee shop, the sound of my footsteps echoing in my ears. The fallout. The days after my confrontation with Chloe were a whirlwind of emotions. Anger and betrayal still coursed through me, but they were joined by something heavier: determination. This wasn't just about surviving Emily's betrayal anymore. This was about reclaiming my life piece by piece. I threw myself into the divorce preparations. Claire worked quickly, filing the necessary paperwork and guiding me through every step. It was grueling, like unraveling a tapestry I'd spent years weaving. Every account closed, every asset divided, every memory cataloged. It all felt like dismantling the life I thought I had. But the hardest part was the silence. Emily didn't call, didn't text. It was as if she'd erased me from her life overnight. And maybe that's what stung the most. How easily she walked away, leaving behind nothing but chaos and unanswered questions. Then, one evening, my phone buzzed with a call from an unknown number. "Hello," I answered, my voice cautious. "Jack." It was Emily. I gripped the phone tightly, my chest tightening. "What do you want?" Her voice was calm, almost detached. "Claire sent me the divorce papers. I just wanted to let you know I'll be signing them. No need to drag this out." Her tone was so cold, so transactional. "That's it?" I asked, my voice hard. "After everything, you're just signing and walking away? What else is there to say?" She replied flatly. "It's over, Jack. It has been for a while." I wanted to scream, to yell, to make her feel even a fraction of the pain she'd caused. But instead, I took a deep breath and said, "Good. Sign them. And don't bother calling again." "Fine," she said, her voice emotionless. The line went dead, and I set the phone down, staring at it as the weight of her final words sank in. She was gone, truly gone. But in her absence, I felt something else stirring. The resolve to move forward, to rebuild. This wasn't just the end of my marriage. It was the beginning of something new. It sent another wave of anger surging through me. "That's it," I said, my voice trembling. No explanation, no apology, just a quick signature and you're done. She sighed, the sound heavy with impatience. "What do you want me to say, Jack? That I'm sorry? That I regret what happened? I don't." This was inevitable. Inevitable? I repeated, my hands shaking. "You cheated on me, Emily. You lied to my face for months. And now you're acting like this was some natural progression? Like I deserved it?" There was a long pause before she responded, her tone as cold as ever. "I didn't call to fight. I called to make this easier. You want your closure? Fine. I'm signing the papers. End of story. Closure," I said bitterly, laughing without humor. "You think signing a piece of paper gives me closure? You think it erases everything you've done?" Her voice hardened, the detachment in her tone now laced with irritation. "You're the one who wanted this over with. Now it is. Stop dragging it out, Jack. It's pathetic." And then she hung up. I stood there, the silence of the call cutting deeper than her words. This wasn't indifference. It was cruelty. She wanted me to feel small, powerless. And for a fleeting moment, I did. But only for a moment. Underscore. A revelation. I paced the house, her words echoing in my mind. Something about the call didn't sit right. If Emily was so eager to move on, why call at all? Why not just sign the papers and be done with it? And then it hit me. She wasn't in control anymore, and she hated it. Signing those papers wasn't just the end of our marriage. It was the end of her control over me. The realization gave me strength. The next day, I sat down with Claire and went over every detail of the divorce settlement. "Don't let her walk away unscathed," I said, my voice firm. "She doesn't get to destroy my life and keep everything intact." Claire nodded, her expression serious. "We'll make sure this is fair, Jack. But be prepared. If she's as cold as you say, she'll fight back." And fight back she did. The fight. Emily contested nearly every part of the settlement, from the house to the smallest shared assets. Her emails to Claire were laced with venom, accusing me of being spiteful and petty. But I didn't cave. Not this time. Then a week later, I got another call. This time it was from Chloe. "I just thought you should know," she began, her voice dripping with fake concern. "Emily's been telling people you're trying to ruin her life. She's saying you're dragging out the divorce to punish her." I laughed, sharp and humorless. "Of course she is. That's her MO, isn't it? Play the victim, make everyone else the bad guy." Chloe hesitated. "Look, Jack, I know you're angry. You don't know anything," I snapped. "You're just as complicit in this as she is. So don't call me pretending to care." I hung up before she could respond, the sound of the call ending ringing in my ears. That night, something inside me shifted. I wasn't going to let Emily or her allies paint me as the villain. I wasn't going to let them rewrite the story of my life. I opened my laptop, pulled up every piece of evidence I had, texts, emails, photos, and compiled them into a neat folder. This wasn't for revenge. It wasn't to hurt her. It was to protect myself, to ensure the truth was on my side if she tried to twist it any further. When I was done, I sat back and took a deep breath. The anger was still there, the pain too. But for the first time, I felt a sense of control. The breaking point. 2 weeks later, the divorce negotiations reached a boiling point. Emily wasn't just fighting to keep what she thought she was entitled to. She was fighting to keep control of the narrative. Her lawyer sent over an email claiming I was vindictive and unreasonable, accusing me of dragging out the process to make her life miserable. I forwarded it to Claire with a simple note. Me, use everything we've got. Claire didn't hesitate. The next day, she submitted the evidence, screenshots of Emily's messages with Matt, calendar entries that didn't align with her work schedule, and financial records showing how she'd spent our joint savings on their little getaways. By the end of the week, Emily's tone shifted. Her lawyer emailed a counterproposal, one that was notably less aggressive. Claire smirked as she read it aloud. Looks like someone's had a change of heart. But I wasn't satisfied. This wasn't just about money or assets anymore. This was about ensuring that Emily couldn't just walk away unscathed, rewriting the narrative to suit her version of events. This was about reclaiming my life and making it clear I wouldn't be her scapegoat. And as I stared at the papers in front of me, I realized something else. I wasn't just signing the end of a marriage. I was signing the beginning of a new chapter, one where I finally got to be free. The truth was out, and it felt liberating. The dinner party bombshell. That Friday, Jason and a few friends invited me over for dinner. They claimed it was to help me take my mind off things, but I knew better. The curiosity in their voices was unmistakable. They wanted the latest on the drama. Still, I needed a break, even if the thought of facing everyone felt exhausting. Jason greeted me at the door with his usual bear hug. "Good to see you, man," he said. "You're looking better. More alive." "Thanks," I replied, managing a small smile. Surviving one day at a time, the night unfolded as expected. The wine flowed, conversations bounced from topic to topic, and eventually, someone broached the subject of Emily. It was Jason, of course, lowering his voice like he was revealing a scandal. "So, Chloe's been running her mouth," he said, glancing at me. "Apparently, Emily's telling people you're out for blood." "Let her," I said, leaning back in my chair. "She's got nothing left to stand on." Jason raised an eyebrow. "You seem calm about this." "I've got receipts," I replied simply, earning a few chuckles from the group. Then Lisa, one of the quieter friends in our circle, chimed in, her tone casual but her eyes sharp. "You know, I ran into Matt the other day," she said, swirling her wine. The room fell silent. "He didn't look too happy," Lisa continued. "Said things with Emily weren't exactly working out." I straightened in my seat. "What do you mean?" Lisa shrugged. "He didn't say much, just that it's complicated. But he definitely didn't seem like a man in love." A surge of satisfaction coursed through me. It was poetic. Emily had thrown everything away for Matt, and now even that was unraveling. Then Jason pulled out his phone. "Speaking of receipts," he said, scrolling through his messages. "Check this out." He handed me his phone, and my jaw tightened as I read the screen. It was a screenshot of a message from Chloe. "Chloe, Emily's freaking out. Jack's got her backed into a corner. She thinks he's going to ruin her reputation." Jason smirked. "Looks like she's sweating." I handed the phone back, feeling a strange mix of satisfaction and sadness. Emily was unraveling, and while part of me wanted to revel in it, another part, the part that remembered the good years, felt hollow. The final encounter. A few days later, Emily called. I hesitated before answering, but curiosity won. "What do you want?" I said, my tone colder than I intended. Her voice was uncharacteristically soft. "Jack, can we talk? In person." "Why?" I asked, suspicion creeping into my words. "Because," she said after a pause, "I owe you an apology." I didn't trust her, but I agreed. We met at a neutral spot, a park we used to visit when things were good. She looked different. Her usual confidence and sharpness were gone, replaced by something subdued. "I've been thinking," she began, her eyes fixed on the ground. About everything. And I was wrong. About you. About us. I crossed my arms, refusing to make this easy. Took you long enough? She flinched but continued. I don't expect you to forgive me. I needed to say I'm sorry. For the lies, for the way I treated you. For everything. For a moment, I didn't know how to respond. This was the apology I'd waited for, but now that it was here, it felt hollow. I appreciate the apology, I said finally, my voice steady. But it doesn't change anything. You made your choices, Emily. And now we both have to live with them. She nodded, tears welling in her eyes. I know. Don't, I said, cutting her off. You don't get to rewrite this. Not now. She looked at me, her expression crumbling, and for the first time, I saw genuine regret. But it didn't matter anymore. I turned and walked away, leaving her standing there in the park, a ghost of the woman I once loved. Moving forward, the divorce was finalized quietly. No dramatic courtroom battles, no fiery exchanges. Just a few signatures, a handful of emails exchanged between lawyers, and an official confirmation that Emily and I were no longer bound by marriage. When Claire emailed me to confirm that everything was done, I stared at the screen for a long moment. The words felt surreal. Something I had fought so hard to save was now over. But instead of grief, I felt relief. Emily had burned our life to the ground. But from the ashes, I was starting to rebuild stronger, wiser, and this time just for me. The weight I had carried for months, years, really was finally gone. Cutting ties. The first thing I did was clear the house. I gathered every trace of Emily. Her clothes she hadn't bothered to collect, her trinkets, even the framed photos I hadn't been able to bear looking at since everything fell apart. By the end of the day, the house felt emptier, but it also felt like mine for the first time. Most of her things went to donation centers, but one box remained, shoved into the corner of the garage. It was taped shut and labeled with her name. If she wanted it, she could come and get it. If not, it would sit there forgotten until I decided what to do with it or didn't. Then I turned my focus inward. I started going to the gym again, something I hadn't done in years. At first, it was just a way to channel the anger and frustration. But soon it became more than that. Each weight I lifted felt like a small triumph, a step toward reclaiming the strength I thought I'd lost. Each mile on the treadmill was a metaphorical step away from the man I had been with her. Slowly but surely, I started feeling stronger, not just physically but mentally. I reconnected with old friends, people I had neglected during my marriage. Jason, always the loyal friend, stuck by me. He dragged me to social events, determined not to let me sink into isolation. See, he said one night over beers, told you there's life after Emily. Yeah, I replied, a genuine smile tugging at my lips for the first time in what felt like forever. You were right. The unexpected message. One evening, a few weeks after the divorce was finalized, my phone buzzed with a message from an unknown number. Unknown? Jack, it's Matt. Can we talk? I stared at the screen, my mind racing. Of all the people I expected to hear from, Matt was at the bottom of the list. Against my better judgment, I replied. Me? What could you possibly have to say to me? Matt, please. I just need 5 minutes. Curiosity won out, and I agreed to meet him at a nearby coffee shop. When I arrived, Matt was already there, looking far less smug than I remembered. His shoulders slumped, his face pale. He looked defeated. Thanks for coming, he said as I sat down. Make it quick, I replied, crossing my arms. He nodded, his hands fidgeting nervously. I wanted to say I'm sorry. For everything. I didn't know Emily was married at first. And when I found out, I should have walked away. But I didn't. I didn't respond, letting the silence stretch. She lied to me too, you know, he continued, his voice tinged with bitterness. Made me think you were some awful husband, that she was stuck in this miserable marriage. I believed her because I wanted to. My jaw tightened, but I said nothing. And now, he let out a hollow laugh. Now I see who she really is. She's already moved on to someone else. Left me the same way she left you. The vindication was undeniable, but I didn't let it show. What did you expect, Matt? I said finally, that she'd cheat with you, but never cheat on you? He flinched, the truth hitting harder than I anticipated. "I guess I deserve that," he said quietly. "Yeah, you do," I replied, standing up. "But it's not my job to forgive you. That's your problem, not mine." I walked out without another word, leaving him sitting there, a hollow shell of the man who had helped destroy my marriage. Looking forward, that night, I sat on my porch, watching the sun dip below the horizon. For the first time in months, I felt like I could breathe. The anger, the bitterness, it was still there, lingering like a faint scar. But it didn't control me anymore. Emily was gone. The life we had built was gone. But I was still here. And for the first time, that felt like enough. I didn't have all the answers. I didn't know exactly what my next steps would be. But I knew one thing for certain. I wasn't the same man who had stood by while Emily tore my life apart. I was stronger now, wiser, and ready to rebuild. This wasn't the ending I had wanted, but it was the one I needed. As the last rays of sunlight faded into the night, a quiet realization settled over me. The best parts of my story were still ahead. Sometimes, life doesn't go as planned. We face betrayal, heartbreak, and moments that make us question everything we thought we knew. But in those moments, we find strength we didn't know we had. Rebuilding isn't easy, but it's worth it. Because in the end, the best parts of your story are still waiting to be written. Thank you for watching and sharing this journey with me. If you've ever faced something similar or just need a place to vent, drop a comment below. Let's keep the conversation going. This is Reddit Cheating Stories, where the truth always finds its way to light. Until next time, take care of yourselves